Sophia pressed her forehead against the cool window of the school bus, watching the rain streak down the glass. Her backpack felt heavier than usual today, weighed down by more than just textbooks. Inside was a letter she hadn't shown her parents yet. A letter that could change everything. The bus lurched to a stop, and Sophia made her way down the familiar streets to her apartment building. The elevator was broken again, so she climbed the 4 flights of stairs, her legs burning by the time she reached her door. She could hear her younger brother playing video games through the thin walls before she even turned the key. "Sophie's home," Diego shouted, not taking his eyes off the screen. Her mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "How was school, mija?" Sophia forced a smile. "Fine, Mama, just tired." But it wasn't fine. Nothing about today had been fine. She dumped her backpack on her bed and pulled out the letter, staring at the school letterhead. Her chemistry teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had written it personally. Sophia had read it so many times on the bus that she practically had it memorized. The letter recommended that Sophia drop out of the Advanced Placement Science program. According to Mrs. Patterson, Sophia was struggling too much with the material. Her test scores were below average, and she was holding back the rest of the class. The letter suggested she transfer to regular chemistry instead, where the pace would be more suitable for her learning style. Sophia crumpled the letter in her fist. Learning style. That was just a polite way of saying she wasn't smart enough. She had always loved science. As a kid, she'd spent hours watching nature documentaries, fascinated by how everything in the world worked. When other girls her age were playing with dolls, Sophia was catching bugs in jars and trying to identify them. Her father used to joke that she'd grow up to cure cancer or discover a new planet, but her father wasn't around anymore. He'd gone back to Mexico 3 years ago when his visa expired, promising he'd find a way to return legally. The family was still waiting, and without his income, money was tighter than ever. Her mother worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse's aide, coming home exhausted every night. Sophia had promised herself she'd make them proud. She'd be the first person in her family to go to college, maybe even become a real scientist. But now, staring at that crumpled letter, those dreams felt impossibly far away. The next morning, Sophia walked into chemistry class with her stomach in knots. Mrs. Patterson was writing equations on the board, her back turned to the students filing in. Sophia slid into her usual seat in the back row. She used to sit in the front, eager and ready to learn, but after failing 2 tests in a row, she'd retreated to the back, hoping to become invisible. It didn't work. Mrs. Patterson's eyes found her almost immediately. "Sophia, could you stay after class, please? We need to discuss something." Every head in the classroom turned to look at her. Sophia felt her cheeks burn. She knew exactly what this was about. Her parents had probably received their copy of the letter yesterday. The class dragged on forever. Sophia barely heard a word Mrs. Patterson said about molecular structures and chemical bonds. Her mind was racing, trying to prepare for the conversation ahead. Should she argue? Should she beg for another chance? Or should she just accept that she wasn't cut out for this? When the bell finally rang, Sophia's classmates filed out, casting curious glances her way. She approached Mrs. Patterson's desk slowly, like a prisoner walking to sentencing. Mrs. Patterson gestured to a chair. "Please sit down." Sophia sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I assume you received my letter?" Mrs. Patterson began, her tone businesslike. "I wanted to speak with you in person because I know this must be difficult to hear." Sophia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "You're a bright girl, Sophia. Don't misunderstand me. But AP Chemistry is one of the most challenging courses we offer. It moves at a very fast pace, and it requires a certain level of aptitude for abstract thinking. Some students simply aren't wired for that kind of academic work, and there's no shame in it." There it was, that word, aptitude, another polite way of saying she didn't have what it takes. "But I love science," Sophia said quietly. "It's all I've ever wanted to do." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened slightly. "I understand that. And you can still pursue science. Just perhaps not at this level. Regular chemistry is perfectly adequate for most careers. You don't need AP credits to be successful in life." Sophia felt tears prickling at her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't cry, not here. "Not in front of Mrs. Patterson, can I think about it?" Sophia asked. Mrs. Patterson sighed. "Of course. But I've already scheduled a parent conference for tomorrow after school. Your mother confirmed she'll be there. I think it's important we all discuss your academic path together. Sophia's heart sank. Her mother would be devastated. She worked so hard to give Sophia and Diego opportunities she'd never had. And now Sophia was throwing it all away by being too stupid to keep up with a high school class. That evening, Sophia couldn't concentrate on her homework. She sat at the small kitchen table staring at her chemistry textbook without really seeing it. The formulas and equations might as well have been written in a foreign language. She'd spent hours studying for the last test, but when she sat down to take it, her mind had gone blank. Every question looked impossible. Her mother came home late, smelling like disinfectant and exhaustion. She kissed the top of Sophia's head and peered at her textbook. Still studying? You work too hard, mija. Sophia almost laughed. Too hard? Clearly not hard enough. Mama, I got a letter from school today. Mrs. Patterson wants to meet with you tomorrow. Her mother's face tightened with concern. What kind of letter? Are you in trouble? No, nothing like that. It's about my classes. Her mother pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. Tell me, so Sophia did. She explained about the AP program, about her failing grades, about Mrs. Patterson's recommendation that she drop down. She watched her mother's face as she spoke, seeing the disappointment settle in. When she finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do? She finally asked. Sophia looked up in surprise. She'd expected her mother to be angry or worse, to agree with Mrs. Patterson. I want to stay in the class. I want to prove I can do this. Her mother reached across the table and took Sophia's hand. Then we fight. But Mama, what if Mrs. Patterson is right? What if I'm really not smart enough? Her mother's grip tightened. Listen to me. Your father and I, we came to this country with nothing. No education, no English, no money. People told us we couldn't make it. They said we should go back where we came from. But we didn't listen. And look at us now. I'm working in a hospital. Your brother is getting good grades. And you're in advanced classes at one of the best high schools in the city. But I'm failing, Sophia whispered. So you're struggling. So what? That doesn't mean you quit. That means you work harder. You find another way. You ask for help. But you don't let one teacher tell you what you can and cannot do with your life. Sophia felt tears spilling down her cheeks now. But they were different tears. Not tears of defeat, but something else. Something like hope. I don't know how to work harder, Mama. I already study every night. Her mother stood up and began rummaging through the kitchen drawer. She pulled out a notepad and pen. Tomorrow at this meeting, we ask what resources are available. Tutoring, extra help sessions, study groups, whatever it takes. And if this teacher won't help you, we find someone who will. That night, Sophia lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She could hear her mother in the next room, probably still awake, probably worrying about how to pay for a tutor on top of all the other bills. Sophia felt guilty for not just accepting Mrs. Patterson's recommendation. It would be easier for everyone if she just gave up. But then she thought about her father, thousands of miles away in Mexico, working construction jobs and sending money home whenever he could. She thought about her mother's tired face, the way she never complained even when her feet hurt from standing all day. She thought about Diego, who looked up to her, who bragged to his friends that his sister was going to be a famous scientist. She couldn't let them down. She couldn't let herself down. Sophia rolled over and looked at the poster on her wall. It showed the International Space Station floating against the darkness of space. She'd hung it there when she was 12, full of dreams about discovering new worlds and making breakthroughs that would change humanity. Those dreams suddenly felt very small and very far away, but they were still there. And as long as they were there, Sophia decided, she had to keep trying, even if everyone else thought she should quit. The parent conference was worse than Sophia had imagined. Mrs. Patterson sat behind her desk like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict, while Sophia and her mother perched on uncomfortable plastic chairs meant for much younger students. Her mother had left work early, still wearing her hospital scrubs, and Sophia could see the tiredness etched into every line of her face. Mrs. Patterson laid out Sophia's test scores like evidence at a trial. Each number was lower than the last. She spoke in that same polite but firm tone, explaining that the AP program simply wasn't the right fit. That Sophia would be much happier and more successful in the regular track, that sometimes students needed to be realistic about their abilities. Sophia's mother listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. But when Mrs. Patterson finished, her mother straightened her shoulders. "What help have you offered my daughter?" she asked. Mrs. Patterson blinked. "I'm sorry?" "My daughter tells me she's struggling. So what help have you given her? Extra tutoring? Study sessions? Different ways to teach the material?" "Mrs. Rivera, the AP program is designed for self-motivated students who can work independently. If Sophia needs that level of assistance, it's a sign that the program isn't appropriate for her." Sophia watched her mother's jaw tighten. She knew that look. It was the same expression her mother wore when arguing with insurance companies or dealing with rude customers. "My daughter is self-motivated. She studies every night until she falls asleep over her books. What she needs is a teacher who believes in her." The meeting ended badly. Mrs. Patterson agreed to let Sophia stay in the class for now, but made it clear she thought it was a mistake. As they walked out of the school building, Sophia's mother was silent, her anger radiating like heat. "I'm sorry, Mama," Sophia said quietly. Her mother stopped walking and turned to face her. "Don't you dare apologize. You did nothing wrong. That woman has already decided what you can and can't do, and she's not even trying to help you succeed. But maybe she's right. Maybe I'm just not smart enough." Her mother gripped Sophia's shoulders. "Never say that again. You hear me? Never." That weekend, Sophia's mother made her come along to her volunteer shift at the community center. Sophia had been volunteering there since freshman year, helping set up for events and serving food at community dinners. It wasn't exciting, but it looked good on college applications. Or at least it would have if college was still a possibility. This particular Saturday, the community center was hosting a science fair for local elementary and middle school students. Sophia's job was to help set up the tables and chairs, arrange the display boards, and make sure everything ran smoothly. She moved through the gym mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She was setting up a table near the entrance when she noticed an older woman struggling with a large box of equipment. The woman looked to be in her 70s with short gray hair and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She was trying to maneuver the box onto a table while simultaneously keeping several poster boards from falling over. Sophia rushed over. "Let me help you with that." Together they lifted the box onto the table. The woman smiled gratefully, adjusting her glasses. "Thank you, dear. I'm not as strong as I used to be. Getting old is not for the faint of heart." Sophia helped her unpack the box, which contained beakers, filters, and what looked like water testing equipment. The poster boards explained a project about water purification methods. As Sophia arranged the items, she found herself actually reading the information. "This is really interesting," she said, surprising herself. "I didn't know you could test water quality so easily." The woman's eyes lit up. "Oh, it's fascinating. I've spent 40 years studying water systems. Still can't get enough of it." She extended her hand. "I'm Dr. Helen Zhao. I teach at the community college. Sophia Rivera. I'm just a volunteer." "Well, Sophia Rivera, who's just a volunteer, you seem genuinely interested. Are you studying science in school?" Sophia hesitated. "Sort of. I mean, I'm trying to. It's not going very well." Dr. Zhao began setting up her demonstration, showing Sophia how the different filtration systems worked. She explained how contamination happens, how it's detected, and why clean water access is one of the most important public health issues in the world. She didn't talk down to Sophia or use complicated jargon. She just shared her passion for the subject, and Sophia found herself asking question after question. "You know," Dr. Zhao said as she prepared a water sample for testing, "you remind me of myself at your age. Curious about everything, but convinced I wasn't smart enough to be a real scientist." Sophia looked up sharply. "Really? Oh yes. I came to this country when I was 16. Barely spoke English. My science teacher told me I should focus on learning the language before worrying about advanced subjects. Said my accent would hold me back anyway." She adjusted her glasses and smiled. "I proved him wrong. Got my PhD in environmental science from MIT. Spent my career doing research that's helped improve water quality for millions of people." "How did you do it?" Sophia asked. "How did you go from barely speaking English to MIT?" Dr. Zhao stopped what she was doing and looked at Sophia carefully. "I found people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I learned that being slow doesn't mean being stupid. I wasn't the fastest student. I had to work twice as hard as everyone else, but I paid attention to details they missed. I asked questions they were too embarrassed to ask. And eventually that persistence paid off. Sophia felt something crack open inside her chest. My chemistry teacher wants me to drop out of AP classes. She says I don't have the aptitude for it. Does she now? Dr. Zhao's expression hardened.
And what do you think?
I don't know. Maybe she's right. I keep failing tests even though I study really hard. Tell me about your studying. How do you prepare for these tests? Sophia explained her study routine. Reading the textbook over and over, memorizing formulas, doing practice problems until her hand cramped. Dr. Zhao listened carefully, nodding occasionally. That's your problem right there, she said finally. Sophia's heart sank. Even Dr. Zhao thought she was hopeless. You're trying to memorize instead of understand. Science isn't about memorization. It's about seeing patterns, making connections, understanding why things work the way they do. You need to approach it completely differently. The science fair was starting and families began filing into the gym. But Dr. Zhao pulled out a business card and pressed it into Sophia's hand. I teach introductory chemistry at the community college on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Adult education classes. Why don't you come sit in? No charge, no enrollment, just learning. See if a different approach helps. Sophia stared at the card. You'd let me do that? I'd be delighted to have you. Someone with your genuine curiosity? That's exactly the kind of student I love teaching. That Tuesday evening, Sophia told her mother she was staying late at the library to study. It wasn't exactly a lie. She took 2 buses to reach the community college, arriving just as Dr. Zhao's class was starting. The classroom was nothing like her high school. Instead of teenagers, she was surrounded by adults of all ages. A middle-aged man in a mechanic's uniform, a young mother with a baby in a carrier, several elderly people taking notes with careful attention. These were people who had jobs and families and responsibilities, but were here trying to learn anyway. Dr. Zhao taught completely differently than Mrs. Patterson. She didn't just write equations on the board and expect everyone to understand. She told stories. She used examples from everyday life. She explained why chemicals behaved the way they did, what was actually happening at the molecular level, why it mattered in the real world. When she explained pH levels, she didn't just give definitions. She talked about how pH affects everything from the food we eat to the health of rivers and lakes. She brought in samples and let students test them. She made it real and tangible, and suddenly Sophia understood something she'd been struggling with for weeks. After class, Sophia approached Dr. Zhao's desk nervously. That was amazing, she said. I actually understood it. I've been studying pH for a month and it never made sense until tonight. Dr. Zhao beamed. You see? You're not stupid. You just needed someone to explain it in a way that works for your brain. Everyone learns differently. Can I come back on Thursday? I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Sophia started attending both of Dr. Zhao's weekly classes. She didn't tell anyone at school, not even her mother at first. It felt like her secret, this place where she wasn't the struggling student in the back row, where she could ask questions without feeling dumb, where learning science felt exciting again instead of terrifying. Dr. Zhao started giving her extra materials, books from her own collection, articles about current research, simple experiments Sophia could do at home with household items. They'd stay after class talking about everything from climate change to medical breakthroughs. Dr. Zhao shared stories about her research career, the obstacles she'd faced, the discoveries she'd made. You know what the key to being a good scientist is? Dr. Zhao asked one evening as they packed up the lab equipment. It's not being the smartest person in the room. It's being willing to fail, to try again, to look at problems from different angles. Some of the greatest discoveries in history were made by people who were told they weren't good enough. Sophia's grades at school started improving, but slowly. She was beginning to understand the concepts, but test-taking was still her weakness. Mrs. Patterson remained skeptical, treating each slightly better grade as a temporary fluke rather than real progress. But something had shifted in Sophia. She stopped sitting in the back row. She started raising her hand even if she wasn't sure her answer was right. When Mrs. Patterson dismissed her questions, Sophia would bring them to Dr. Zhao, who always took them seriously. One Thursday evening, about 2 months after they'd met, Dr. Zhao had a special assignment for the class. I want each of you to design a small research project. Nothing elaborate. Just something you're genuinely curious about. Something in your own community that you want to investigate, using the scientific method we've been learning. The other students groaned good-naturedly. More homework on top of their already busy lives. But Sophia felt a spark of excitement. A real research project. A chance to do actual science, not just study it. She spent the next week thinking about what to investigate. Dr. Zhao had emphasized choosing something practical, something that mattered to your daily life. Sophia thought about her neighborhood, her apartment building, the challenges her community faced. And then one evening, as she filled a glass of water from the kitchen tap, she noticed something. The water looked slightly cloudy. It had a faint metallic taste. She'd never really paid attention before. Everyone in her building complained about the water, but it was just one of those things. Old building, old pipes, what could you do? But now, after weeks of learning about water quality and contamination, Sophia wondered, what was actually in this water? And more importantly, was it safe? She brought her idea to Dr. Zhao at the next class. I want to test the water in my apartment building, and maybe in other buildings in my neighborhood. See if there's anything wrong with it. Dr. Zhao's eyes lit up. Now that's a proper research question. And you know what? I have all the testing equipment you'd need. I can teach you how to use it properly. Sophia felt like she'd been handed a treasure map, her own research project, a real investigation into a real problem. This wasn't about memorizing formulas or passing tests. This was about finding answers to questions that actually mattered. This was what being a scientist felt like. For the first time since Mrs. Patterson had sent that letter, Sophia felt something she'd almost forgotten. She felt capable. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she could actually do this. Sophia stood in Dr. Zhao's lab at the community college, staring at the array of testing equipment spread across the counter. It looked intimidating, all these instruments with complicated names and precise calibrations, but Dr. Zhao moved through them with casual confidence, showing Sophia each piece and explaining its purpose. This is a spectrophotometer, Dr. Zhao said, patting a machine that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. It measures the concentration of substances in water by analyzing how light passes through the sample. And this lovely old thing, she gestured to another device, tests for heavy metals, lead, copper, mercury, the stuff you definitely don't want in your drinking water. Sophia pulled out her notebook and started taking notes. Dr. Zhao had taught her to document everything. Every step of the process, every observation, every measurement. Good science, she'd explained, wasn't just about finding answers. It was about showing your work so others could verify your results. Now, before we start testing, we need to establish a proper research methodology, Dr. Zhao said, settling onto a lab stool. Tell me your plan. Sophia had been thinking about this all week. I want to test water from different apartments in my building. Different floors, different sides of the building. See if there's any pattern. Good start. What's your hypothesis? Sophia hesitated. I guess I think the water might not be safe. That's what I'm trying to find out. Dr. Zhao shook her head gently. That's not specific enough. A hypothesis needs to be testable and precise. What exactly do you think you'll find? And why? Sophia thought hard. Well, my building is really old. Built in the 1960s, I think. And old buildings sometimes have old pipes. Lead pipes. So my hypothesis is that the water will have higher lead levels than the city says is safe. Much better. Now what will you compare it to? You need a control group. They spent the next hour planning out the research design. Sophia would test water from 10 different apartments in her building, collecting samples at the same time of day to keep conditions consistent. She'd also test water from a newer apartment building 2 blocks away as a control, and she'd compare all her results to the city's official water quality reports. Dr. Zhao provided her with sample collection bottles, all carefully labeled and sterile. She showed Sophia how to properly collect water samples, how to avoid contamination, how to store them correctly. Remember, Dr. Zhao said as Sophia carefully packed the bottles into her backpack, you're doing real science now. That means being meticulous about every detail. If your results show something concerning, people need to be able to trust your methodology. Sophia spent the next 2 weeks collecting samples. She went door to door in her apartment building, explaining her school project to neighbors. Most people were happy to help, though some were skeptical. What's the point? Asked Mrs. Kowalski from apartment 3B. The water's been the same for 30 years. It's not great, but it won't kill you. But she let Sophia collect a sample anyway, and even offered her cookies while Sophia carefully filled the bottle and labeled it with the apartment number and collection time. Diego thought the whole thing was hilarious. My sister, the water detective, he teased, watching her line up sample bottles on their kitchen counter. It's called research, Sophia replied with as much dignity as she could muster. Her mother was more supportive, though worried. Just be careful with those chemicals. And don't bother the neighbors too much. The testing itself was painstaking work. Dr. Zhao had given Sophia access to the college lab on weekend mornings, when it wasn't being used for classes. Sophia would arrive early, her backpack heavy with water samples, and spend hours running tests. She learned to use the spectrophotometer, carefully calibrating it before each use. She learned to prepare samples, adding specific reagents and waiting for precise amounts of time. She learned that science was less about dramatic moments of discovery and more about patience, precision, and paperwork. The first results came back normal. The water from the newer building showed exactly what you'd expect. Safe levels of everything, matching the city's reports almost perfectly. Sophia felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Maybe there was nothing wrong after all. Maybe this would just be a simple project proving everything was fine. But then she tested the first sample from her own building, apartment 4C, same floor as her family. She ran the test 3 times because she was sure she'd made a mistake. But the numbers stayed the same. The lead levels were high, not dangerous enough to cause immediate harm, but well above what the EPA considered safe for long-term exposure. Sophia's hands shook as she wrote down the results. She tested another sample. Same thing. And another. Every sample from her building showed elevated lead levels. Some were worse than others, but all of them exceeded safe limits. She stayed in the lab until Dr. Zhao found her, still testing samples long after the morning session should have ended. Sophia? What's wrong? Sophia showed her the results, her voice barely above a whisper. There's lead in the water. In my building. In my apartment. My family's been drinking this for years. Dr. Zhao examined the results carefully, her expression growing more serious with each page. She didn't dismiss Sophia's work or suggest she'd made errors. Instead, she pulled up a stool and sat down next to her. These levels are concerning, she said quietly. But before we jump to conclusions, we need to be absolutely certain. Lead testing can be tricky. We need to verify these results. They spent the rest of the day running confirmatory tests, different methods, different equipment, multiple samples from the same apartments. Every test confirmed Sophia's initial findings. The water in her building contained unsafe levels of lead. Where is this lead coming from? Sophia asked. Dr. Zhao pulled up building records on her computer. Your building was constructed in 1967. That was before lead pipes were banned in residential plumbing. My guess is the building still has lead service lines or lead solder in the pipes. Why hasn't anyone noticed this before? The city tests the water, right? They do, but they test at the treatment plant and at certain locations throughout the system. They can't test every building. And landlords aren't required to test unless there's a complaint. Sophia thought about all the families in her building. The elderly couple on the first floor. The family with 3 young kids on the 3rd floor. Mrs. Kowalski, who'd lived there for 30 years. They were all drinking contaminated water and nobody knew. What do we do? She asked. We expand the research, Dr. Zhao said firmly. If your building has this problem, other old buildings in the neighborhood might too. We test more locations. We document everything thoroughly. And then we bring this to the authorities. Over the next month, Sophia's small school project transformed into something much bigger. With Dr. Zhao's guidance, she expanded her testing to include 10 different buildings in her neighborhood. All of them were older constructions built in the 1960s and 1970s. All of them housed primarily low-income families. Sophia developed a routine. After school, she'd do her homework quickly, then spend evenings going door-to-door collecting samples. On weekends, she'd be in Dr. Zhao's lab running tests. She filled 3 notebooks with data, carefully documenting every result. Her grades at school started slipping again, not because she didn't understand the material anymore, but because she was spending all her time on the water project. Mrs. Patterson noticed. I see you're falling behind again, Sophia, she said one day after class. I hope you're not overextending yourself. Sophia wanted to tell her about the research, about the lead she'd discovered, about how she was doing real science that actually mattered. But something stopped her. Mrs. Patterson had never believed in her before. Why would she start now? I'm fine, Sophia said. Just busy with college applications. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was thinking about college more now. Dr. Zhao had been encouraging her to aim higher than she'd initially planned. With research experience like this, you could get into some excellent programs, she'd said. The results from the expanded testing were even more alarming. Out of 10 buildings tested, 8 showed elevated lead levels. The pattern was clear. Older buildings in lower-income neighborhoods had dangerous water, while newer buildings in wealthier areas were fine. Sophia cross-referenced her findings with city records, with building permits, with demographic data. She created charts and graphs showing the correlation. Buildings built before 1978, when lead was banned in plumbing, showed the highest contamination. Buildings in neighborhoods with median incomes below $30,000 were less likely to have updated plumbing systems. This isn't just about lead in water, Dr. Zhao said as they reviewed Sophia's analysis. This is about environmental justice, about how poor communities are being exposed to health hazards that wealthier communities don't face. Sophia had heard the term environmental justice before, but it had always seemed abstract. Now it was personal. Her neighbors, her family, her community were the ones being harmed. She thought about her little brother Diego, who'd been drinking this water his whole life. She thought about the kids in her building who she saw playing in the courtyard every day. Lead exposure could cause developmental problems, learning disabilities, behavioral issues. How many kids in her neighborhood were struggling in school not because they weren't smart enough, but because they'd been poisoned by their own tap water? The anger that rose in Sophia was unlike anything she'd felt before. This wasn't fair. This wasn't right. And apparently nobody in authority cared enough to fix it. We need to tell someone, Sophia said. The city health department, the mayor's office, someone. We will, Dr. Zhao assured her. But first, we need to make sure our research is bulletproof. When you're a young person, especially a young woman of color, reporting something this serious, people will look for any reason to dismiss you. We can't give them that reason. So Sophia double-checked everything. She verified her testing methodology. She had Dr. Zhao review all her data analysis. She compared her results with published research on lead contamination. She made sure every claim she made could be backed up with solid evidence. Finally, after 3 months of work, they had a complete report, 38 pages of data, analysis, and conclusions. The evidence was undeniable. Multiple buildings in Sophia's neighborhood had dangerously high lead levels in their drinking water. Thousands of people were potentially affected. Sophia held the printed report in her hands, feeling the weight of it. This was real. She'd done this. She'd discovered something important, something that could help people. I'm proud of you, Dr. Zhao said. This is excellent work. This is the kind of research that makes a real difference. Sophia looked at her. Mentor. This woman who'd believed in her when no one else did. What happens now? Now, Dr. Zhao said with a determined smile, we make some noise. The first person to dismiss Sophia's research was the receptionist at the city health department. Sophia had practiced her presentation all morning, had her report, bound and professional looking, and arrived at the municipal building full of nervous determination. I need to speak with someone about water contamination in residential buildings, Sophia said to the woman behind the desk. The receptionist barely looked up from her computer. Do you have an appointment? No, but this is urgent. I have research showing dangerous lead levels in drinking water. Fill out a complaint form. Someone will get back to you within 4 to 6 weeks. Sophia stared at the form the woman pushed across the desk. It was a single page with basic information. Where was she supposed to attach her 38 pages?
Of data? I don't think you understand, Sophia said, trying to keep her voice steady.
This is a public health emergency. People are being exposed to lead poisoning right now. The receptionist finally looked at her, really looked at her. Sophia saw the woman take in her age, her worn backpack, her school uniform. How old are you? Honey, I'm 17, but that doesn't come back with a parent or guardian. We can't meet with minors without adult supervision. Sophia left the building feeling defeated. She'd expected people to take her seriously once they saw her research. She'd been naive. Dr. Zhao was more pragmatic when Sophia told her what happened. Bureaucracy moves slowly. And they're even slower to respond when the messenger doesn't look like what they expect a scientist to look like. We'll try a different approach. They decided to contact the local health clinic that served Sophia's neighborhood. Dr. Zhao made the call this time, using her credentials to get a meeting with the clinic's director. Sophia brought all her documentation, her data carefully organized in a presentation folder. The director, a tired-looking man named Mr. Phillips, listened to Sophia's presentation. He looked through her data, asked a few questions about her methodology. Sophia answered confidently, grateful for all the preparation Dr. Zhao had made her do. When she finished, Mr. Phillips leaned back in his chair and sighed. "This is concerning research," he said. "But I have to be honest with you. We don't have the resources to address something like this. We're a free clinic serving an underserved community. We can barely afford to keep the lights on." "But you could contact the health department," Sophia pressed. "You could advocate for the community." "I could. And it would go into the same pile as all the other complaints about housing conditions, lack of healthcare access, food deserts, and everything else wrong in this neighborhood. The city knows these problems exist. The question is whether they care enough to fix them." Sophia felt her frustration building. "So we just accept it? People are being poisoned, and we do nothing?" Mr. Phillips's expression softened. "I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying the problem is bigger than one person or even one clinic can solve. This is about political will, about funding, about priorities. And unfortunately, poor neighborhoods are rarely a priority." Sophia left that meeting feeling even worse. It wasn't that people didn't believe her. It was that they didn't care enough to act. She tried the local news next. There was a small newspaper that covered neighborhood issues. Sophia sent them her research along with a letter explaining what she'd found. She waited 2 weeks for a response. Nothing. She called and got passed, from person to person, until finally someone told her they'd look into it but couldn't promise anything. At school, things were getting complicated. Sophia's grades had improved somewhat, but she was still not at the top of her class. Mrs. Patterson continued to view her skeptically, treating her better performance as temporary rather than evidence of real growth. Sophia decided to tell Mrs. Patterson about the water research. Maybe if her teacher saw what she was capable of, she'd finally believe in her. She stayed after class one day, carrying her research folder like a shield. Mrs. Patterson was erasing the board, her back turned. "Mrs. Patterson, can I show you something?" The teacher turned, eyebrows raised. "What is it, Sophia?" Sophia launched into her explanation. The water testing, the lead contamination, the months of research. She showed Mrs. Patterson her data, her methodology, her conclusions. Mrs. Patterson flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. When Sophia finished, there was a long silence. "This is interesting work," Mrs. Patterson said finally. "But I have to ask, Sophia, how much time have you been spending on this project?" Sophia felt a prickle of unease. "A lot of my free time. Evenings, weekends. And that's why your grades are still inconsistent. Sophia, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this kind of extracurricular distraction is exactly why you're struggling in your actual coursework. You need to focus on what matters. Your AP exams are in a few months." Sophia stared at her teacher in disbelief. "This is real science. This matters more than any test." "That may be," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice taking on that familiar condescending tone. "But colleges care about grades and test scores, not side projects. If you want to have any chance at a decent university, you need to get your priorities straight." Sophia gathered up her papers, her hands shaking. She'd been so stupid to think Mrs. Patterson would understand. That evening, Sophia sat at the kitchen table, her research spread out in front of her. Her mother came home from work, took one look at her face, and sat down. What happened? Sophia told her everything. The dismissal at the health department. The indifference at the clinic. Mrs. Patterson's response. Her mother listened without interrupting, her expression growing more determined with each word. "You've done something important here," her mother said when Sophia finished. "You found evidence of something that's hurting people. That's not a distraction. That's exactly what scientists are supposed to do. But nobody will listen to me, I'm just a high school student. Her mother stood up and pulled out her phone. Then we make them listen. You said you sent your research to the newspaper? Which one? Sophia told her, confused about what her mother was planning. Her mother started typing, her thumbs moving quickly across the screen. What are you doing? Posting on the neighborhood social media group. Every parent in this area should know that their children are drinking contaminated water. Let's see the city ignore it when hundreds of angry parents are demanding answers. Sophia watched as her mother crafted a post, explaining the situation in clear, urgent language. She included Sophia's name and mentioned that a local high school student had discovered the contamination. Within minutes, people started commenting. Shocked reactions, questions, shares. Sophia's mother looked at her daughter. You did the hard part. You found the truth. Now we make sure that truth spreads. Over the next few days, Sophia's mother's post went viral within the neighborhood. Parents started testing their own water, finding similar results. A local community organizer reached out wanting to meet with Sophia. Soon, there were plans for a community meeting to discuss the issue. The meeting was held at a church basement, and Sophia was shocked when over 200 people showed up. Parents, community leaders, local activists, and concerned residents filled every chair and lined the walls. Sophia stood at the front of the room, her research projected on a borrowed screen, and told them everything she'd found. She showed them the data, explained the health risks, detailed which buildings were affected. People listened with growing anger and concern. My daughter has been sick for years, one mother said during the question period. Doctors couldn't figure out why. Could this be it? Lead exposure can cause a lot of symptoms, Sophia explained. Headaches, stomach problems, fatigue. It affects children more than adults, and the effects can be long-term. An older man stood up. I've lived in my building for 40 years. Are you telling me I've been poisoned this whole time and nobody checked? Sophia nodded. The city tests at treatment plants and some distribution points, but they don't test individual buildings unless there's a complaint. And even then, response is slow. The crowd's anger grew. People started talking about organizing, about demanding action, about not accepting the situation any longer. A woman who introduced herself as a community activist stood up. We need to take this to the city council, she said. Make them hear us. Make them act. Who's willing to come testify at the next public meeting? Hands shot up around the room. Sophia's included. The city council meeting was held 2 weeks later. Sophia had never been to one before, and the formal chamber intimidated her. Council members sat at a raised platform like judges. City officials in suits occupied the front rows, and in the back, dozens of residents from Sophia's neighborhood waited to speak. When it was Sophia's turn, she walked to the podium with shaking legs. She'd practiced this presentation for days, but standing here under the harsh lights facing these powerful people, she felt very small and very young. But then she thought about Diego drinking contaminated water, about the kids in her building, about all the families who trusted that their government was keeping them safe. She began to speak. She presented her research clearly and methodically. The testing methodology, the results, the analysis. She showed maps highlighting which buildings were affected. She explained the health implications. She cited published research on lead exposure and its long-term effects. The council members listened, some taking notes, others looking skeptical. When she finished, one of them leaned forward. Young lady, this is certainly interesting, but how can we trust the accuracy of tests conducted by a high school student? Before Sophia could respond, Dr. Zhao stood up in the audience. She'd come to support Sophia, though she'd promised to let Sophia speak for herself. If I may address that, Dr. Zhao said. I'm Dr. Helen Zhao, professor of environmental science at the community college. I supervise this research. The methodology is sound. The testing equipment was properly calibrated, and the results have been verified through multiple tests. This research meets academic standards for publication. A murmur went through the chamber. Sophia saw some of the council members sit up straighter. Another council member spoke. Even if these results are accurate, addressing this would require massive infrastructure upgrades. We're talking about millions of dollars to replace old pipes in multiple buildings. And how much will it cost to treat the health problems caused by continued lead exposure? Dr. Zhao countered. How much in medical bills, special education services, lost productivity? Not to mention the moral cost of knowingly allowing citizens to be poisoned. The meeting went on for 3 hours. Resident after resident spoke about their experiences, their concerns, their demands for action. The council promised to investigate, to review the findings, to consider options. Sophia left exhausted but cautiously hopeful. Maybe finally someone in power was listening, but the next day a city official gave a press conference. Sophia watched it on her phone during lunch at school. The official acknowledged that there might be some issues with aging infrastructure in certain neighborhoods, but cautioned against alarmism from unqualified sources. They promised a full city investigation, which would take 6 to 8 months to complete. Sophia felt her hope deflate. 6 to 8 months. People would keep drinking contaminated water that whole time, and who knew if the city's investigation would even confirm her findings. But that evening, her phone started buzzing with notifications. Someone had posted the video of her city council presentation online. It was being shared widely, not just in her neighborhood but across the city. Local news stations were picking up the story. A reporter wanted to interview her. Her mother looked at the phone over Sophia's shoulder and smiled. "See, people are listening. Don't give up now." The phone call came on a random Tuesday afternoon while Sophia was helping Diego with his homework. She didn't recognize the number and almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Is this Sofia Rivera?" a professional voice asked. "Yes, this is her. My name is Patricia Okonkwo, and I'm calling from the National Youth Science Foundation. We've been following the news coverage of your water quality research, and we'd like to formally invite you to submit your work for consideration in our annual Young Scientist Awards program." Sophia's mind went blank. The National Youth Science Foundation was legendary. Their awards were given to the top young researchers in the country. She'd looked at their website once years ago, back when she still dreamed big. The winners all went to elite schools, had access to professional labs, worked with prestigious universities. "I think there's been a mistake," Sophia said. "I'm just a high school student. I did the research at a community college." "We know," Patricia said warmly. "That's part of what makes it so impressive. We evaluate the quality and impact of the research, not the resources available to the researcher. Would you be interested?" Would she be interested? Sophia wanted to laugh or cry. "Maybe both. Yes," she managed. "Yes, absolutely." The next few weeks were a blur. Sophia had to compile her research into the foundation's submission format. She had to get recommendation letters. Dr. Zhao wrote one, of course. The community organizer who'd helped mobilize residents wrote another. And surprisingly, Mr. Phillips from the health clinic wrote one too, talking about how Sophia's research had sparked real change in how the community approached public health issues. She didn't tell anyone at school about the submission, especially not Mrs. Patterson. If Sophia didn't win, she didn't want the humiliation of people knowing she'd tried. The water contamination story continued to grow. A major news network picked it up, running a segment about environmental justice and how low-income communities faced higher exposure to toxins. They interviewed Sophia, and she spoke clearly about the research, about what she'd found, about why it mattered. The public pressure worked. The city fast-tracked their investigation and confirmed Sophia's findings. They announced a plan to replace old pipes in affected buildings, starting with those serving the most children. It would take years and millions of dollars, but it was happening.